And welcome to a special Q&A edition of Wrestlenomics Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Gullo, joined alongside to my, northeast,
That's important.
Brandon Thurston.
Yeah. Yeah. I was told that is a tradition that has to be carried forward. The cardinal direction introduction. I think if you're to my, I think you're to my immediate south, so that would make me to your immediate north.
Immediate
Right?
north.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like the way I take a certain throughway, and yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. You live like right in the middle of South Buffalo. I live like right in the middle of the northern part of Buffalo, I would say.
Yeah.
Right? But
I
I
live
don't live in
I,
North Buffalo. North Buffalo is something
no,
else.
I know the area that you live in. I would call it a certain name, but like I don't know if you want me to get that notification.
Yeah, these days, yeah,
You never know.
yeah, but Buffalo's probably specific. Cardinal directions are probably specific enough. We probably don't need. I'm naming your neighborhood. That would be South Buffalo. I don't think there's any more specific neighborhood name for where you live other than South Buffalo, is there? Or do you not want to say either?
No, but it's very well. No, actually, yeah, there is like certain. You live off in South Buffalo. You live off of one of the four big streets, pretty much.
Mm,
So,
mm,
not going to mention mine.
okay,
Take a wild guess.
okay. Anyway,
But yeah, so what we're doing a special Q&A edition on this Wednesday evening here. It's a beautiful Wednesday evening in Buffalo, New York. It's not snowing or raining, so
the sun
that's an
is shining
upgrade.
on me. You can see the sun shining on me here out the window. I feel like I'm Christina Salen doing one of her tech conferences here, but I am well lit though. I think so. I'm all right.
All right, so we did a couple questions on Patreon. I have a question on Twitter, and those of you watching, you can ask a question. We have the super chat feature here for you. And I mean, business of wrestling questions are obviously, number one focus. But if you have any type of with reason questions, we'll answer them for you
With
here.
reason,
And it could be
what would
mostly
be an
branding
unreasonable
questions. But if
question?
you have a question for me,
What would be an
what would be
unreasonable
what?
question? What would be an unreasonable question?
I don't know, maybe asking about like certain beliefs or what we think of certain very controversial topics
Whether
that
you
have
think
nothing to do with
AEW
wrestling.
actually is better than WWE?
That's a controversial question.
Yes, it is.
I
Okay.
guess that is wrestling related though, so
Mm-hmm.
but so we'll start here and we'll start from Twitter. A friend of the show, DJ Jerka. Uh he said this is probably more applicable to the pay-per-view era, but hypothetically, how much money would a TV network need to offer WWE to broadcast WrestleMania on cable or over the air instead of through streaming?
Well, if it was the pay per view era, that's a lot easier question to answer, right? Because all you have to do is kind of figure out what they made on pay per view for WrestleMania, which is like a million buys, times what's the price point of WrestleMania at the end? Like 60, $70. What was it at the end? Do you remember? I'm
I
sure
think
it's in a spreadsheet somewhere.
$59.99.
For the standard def, maybe.
So HD might have been $69.99.
Let's say it's $70, especially considering it has been on pay per view in 8 years now. $70 times about a million buys is what WrestleMania would do worldwide. It might be at a lower price point in other regions, but it's going to have to take an incredible deal to force WWE to do something out of its norm, right? So that's $70 million gross. Of course, about 55% of that is taken by the pay-per-view distributor, leaving 45%. I am doing a calculator right now. That would leave $31.5 million in pay-per-view gross for WWE. 31.5 million. So a lot more than that. Maybe 50 million.
This ponders a good sidebar question. We've seen BC recently do simulcast through Peacock. So something that would air on Peacock was during an NBC at the same time. And we've seen it with the Olympic coverage. We just saw that this weekend with the USFL.
Mm-hmm.
Would it get to a point, and NBC loves hosting events. They'll tell you when they have bowl, when they have mix. Could maybe down the future they try to simulcast WrestleMania. Obviously, there'll probably be additional money that might have to exchange hands, but that would be an interesting venture.
Have we seen anything? I guess they could. They probably. I think they would be undermining their own product, though, right? Like that's the reason why they have WWE on Peacock is yes for the library, but especially for those monthly. Gotta use the right term here. Premium live events. The biggest premium live event by far is WrestleMania. If you're giving that away for free and even over the air, as I'm looking up at my antenna, um, I could be like, well, I can skip actually April, my April subscription for Peacock because I can just turn on Channel 2, NBC, and watch WrestleMania. Um, what we're seeing often, as far as I know, maybe you'll tell me different, that you'll see often things that are on linear TV get simulcast on streaming. I don't know that we're seeing it the other way around because they're trying to drive that new behavior over to Peacock. You know, we'll accommodate you if you engage with this new platform, and maybe it results in you sticking around and watching other content or signing up for a subscription or whatever. But that putting WrestleMania on linear TV sounds like driving people away from where they want new behavior to happen. Yeah, I think wrestling. I think peak events, premium live events, if you will, are best monetized at a in a pay-per-view like model. And AEW is still doing that for a reason, and UFC is still doing that for a reason, and Triller is still doing that for a reason. It's still a model that works, and it could still be working for WWE, but they broke the machine by launching the network, and things are turning out okay for them anyway. But I don't know, and I think it kind of comes down to the content that they have. But it's more of an entertainment product than it is a sports product, I guess is what I'm getting at. And the things that have continued to survive on pay-per-view are things that are sports like, you know, the big fights. And it's all a whole process, right? Because you could argue that the network strategy itself, implementing that, more enabled Vince to not have to worry so much about the importance of monthly pay-per-views, premium live events, which I think is what has happened since the network. They don't feel quite as important because there isn't the urgency, because there's not as much at risk. There's a monthly subscription. Most people were going to set it and forget it. There was churn. Now there's even less risk. It's all guaranteed $200 million a year.
I don't know if they did it last year, but I know in years past NBC would have like a condensed WrestleMania that would air like a month later. Like, and
That's right. Bill Watts watched it the one year.
Or Saturday Night Live or something.
Yeah, Bill Watts watched it the one year, remember? And then he went and talked on JR's podcast about it. You remember that? That was a big deal for me. To hear what Bill Watts thought of it at that time, modern wrestling, 2014. He thought that, guess what he thought of it? Guess what Bill Watts thought of WrestleMania 30, the condensed version that aired on WrestleMania, that it aired on NBC, which consisted of the Cena and Bray Wyatt match, the Lesnar beating Undertaker, ending the streak match. Guess what wasn't on the NBC special? Daniel Bryan winning the title.
Yep.
Those two matches definitely were on it. What did Bill Watts
I wonder.
Well,
I'm assuming Bill Watts hated it, probably. Though I could see him liking Lesnar.
He likes Lesnar because Lesnar's a stud.
Yeah.
But nobody sold. Undertaker looked terrible. Taker looked terrible.
No psychology, right? Is that what he said?
They didn't sell. And I Bill Watts is Bill Watts. But there was something instructive I found in what he said. He was saying that the Cena match, you know, and he likes this Bray because this is Blackjack's grandson, and he likes Blackjack. But he said that nobody was selling, and it was just people taking turns doing moves. And the only time that anybody really sold was when John Cena fired up before the finish of the match with Bray Wyatt. Um, and I think like sometimes what people mean when they say sell is sometimes they're just talking about firing up, um, getting people ready, sucking people in for the next thing. Selling, we could like expand the definition of what it means. It's like to me, for a long time, what selling just means selling, acting like you're hurt, pretending that you're hurt. The somebody attacked your leg, you're selling the leg. But selling could mean selling anything, right? It could mean selling the match, selling some thing about the match, selling that I'm going to do a comeback, firing up before the comeback. But anyway.
We'll segue that into one of our Patreon questions. Your take kind of on the modern business, I should say. Chris Whitehead asked, from your perspective as a trainer, Brandon, do you think who do you think are the best young wrestlers that you've seen recently? Ideally, not your own trainees, but I assume Garcia is on the list.
This assumes that I watch wrestling. I don't know. I mean, I honestly, I don't watch a lot of wrestling. It's hard to say, and I don't know. NXT is happening. Sometimes I turn on wrestling a lot, but I don't know that I really watch it. I listen to people talk about wrestling, and I listen to how people react to wrestling. I don't know I mean, AEW. It's hard to look at WWE and take young wrestlers' potential that seriously. We're in the early stages of WWE changing how they're going to deal with developmental wrestlers, but we don't really have any answers or end results yet, right? We don't have anybody who's been through the NIL program and was trained at the Performance Center and was on NXT and then went to the main roster and had a several-year run on the main roster. So we don't really know how that's going to pan out. But in general, though, up to this moment, it's hard for me to look at anybody's potential as a young wrestler and be like, well, what are they going to turn into? They because they're probably not going to be given an optimal opportunity to fulfill their potential. So it's hard to, unless some of those wrestlers leave WWE and go on to do other things, it's hard to say anything knowing that it's sort of a moot point and it's not really going to turn into anything. That's not a crazy thing to say, right? Like, because like am I way off? Is this like an easy position to criticize? Like, who's a young wrestler that came from WWE since let's say after Roman Reigns, who's even in WWE's own practicality has become a valuable major, however you want to interpret that, major player for them on the main roster?
Nobody in the last few years. I mean, it like that's the direction Braun Breaker is going to take, but
right,
not there yet.
I guess like who's even who are some wrestlers who are of that level? I'm going way off base of the question. I realize we'll get back to it, but who's of that level? Who's on the card now? I guess we have Drew McIntyre, who's somebody who's developed by WWE a long time ago and was on the Indies even before that. Went away from WWE, worked Impact, worked Evolve, a lot of Indies, came back, right? Braun Strowman, but he's gone. Thinking like after Reigns, before Braun Breaker, right? Baron Corbin.
Yeah, I mean, Damian Priest, maybe. I mean,
sure. And Damian Priest is somebody who definitely had a run in wrestling before WWE. He was in Ring of Honor, memorably. Yeah. But sure. Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny is probably the best example.
Cody Rhodes.
Bianca Belair. Bianca Belair is probably the best example of somebody I'm thinking of here.
Yes, probably the best and I would say probably a majority of their women's division is people they really kind of not maybe built totally from scratch, but had limited experience. Sasha Banks, Bailey, uh, Becky Lynch, like they all worked in the independent scene, but not having these long storied indie careers.
Sure. And I'm thinking Bianca Belair,
Charlotte,
sure, as somebody who I don't think wrestled at all before being recruited to the Performance Center, and has main evented a night of WrestleMania, and is a pretty featured wrestler for them. In AEW, there's
somebody brought up Austin Theory in the chat real
maybe
quick. Somebody brought up Austin Theory in the chat. I guess that
sure
would be your
early days, I would say, for him. But with AEW, there's clearly these tiers, right? There's a lot. There seems to be more of a hierarchy of development, whereas for Vince, it's like he's either into you or he's not, you know. And with AEW, in the 3 to 4 years that they've been around now, and I think we've started to see the shape of their star development. When I say star development, I mean like the tiers and the hierarchy. Sort of, we've started to see that develop, and I know people talk about like these, terms like the next pillars, referring to the fact that there are these 4 people who are referred to as the pillars, who would be MJF, Jungle Boy, Darby Allin,
and Sammy Guevara.
and Sammy
But
Guevara.
now people are throwing in who are the next pillars after that, which we see Lee Moriarty and Daniel Garcia, and there was a couple
Yuta.
other ones I saw, but those two especially.
Yuta.
Wheeler Yuta,
And who?
yep,
I don't know.
has
But
been
anyway,
brought up.
I don't know. I hesitate to say too much. What do I think about what Daniel Garcia is going to do? I think I don't know. I've told him some things, and I've I feel like I'm kind of a hard grader about who's going to go on to become what, and I don't know. I've probably, as a trainer in the years that I was training people, which is like 2015 to 2020. I was not the easiest trainer to deal with. And I think I'm not easy to like go out of my way to say, oh gosh, this person's gonna be great. They're gonna be a huge star. But I think he's going to, because of a lot of reasons, which I guess I can get into. I think he's going to become a big star in wrestling if he stays healthy. Because I used to talk about these 4 things that would, at our level starting out, would get you bookings. 4 things. Have you heard? Have I you heard me give this speech before?
I feel like I have, but I don't know if I can recite all 4. But I feel like I've heard you say this before.
There's 4 things that will get you booked, and they are in order of importance. Number 1, what's the most important thing to getting you booked in a place for the first time?
I would say appearance. Maybe.
That's number 2.
Gear.
That's number 2.
Okay.
Number 1 is who you know, who you're friends with, or if you want to put it in a more charitable tone, who trusts you, who wants to have you around, who thinks you're a good person. And number 2 would be like your appearance, your physique, your look, your gear. Number 3 would be
gear,
your personality, your gimmick, your charisma, whatever terms you want to use. And then number 4, the fourth and final most important thing for whether or not you're going to get booked is wrestling, is how good of a wrestler you are in the ring. So I think the general consensus is that people perceive Daniel Garcia as a good wrestler, right? But I think that number 1 thing, and I see that in a lot of people who have been great wrestlers in this current era, is that you're a good person to deal with, and you're a trustworthy person. He's not somebody who's gonna, screw up. And you're gonna have to worry about how he's gonna behave and how he's gonna react to things. Just being a reasonable, level-headed person, in addition to having things that that people will perceive you as talented because of, like being a good wrestler. I think I think technical wrestlers too, there's this like Dean Malenko syndrome where like just because you're a technical wrestler, people automatically assume, and I don't, we could debate about whether this is actually true for Dean Malenko or not, but people automatically assume that you're like the Iceman, you have no expression and you don't have that much of a personality. I think that's like a stereotype. And I don't think that he's perceived as somebody who's great at promos yet, because that hasn't really happened on TV yet for him. And he's being put with Jericho and other people to give him the rub and elevate his, his recognizability and all that. But on the indies, I saw him do many very good promos that were, that were shot with an iPhone, but otherwise were suitable for performance of somebody who's on TV. I think especially of the promo that he did in ECMC on whatever floor of ECMC in a wheelchair. You probably remember that one, Gullo. Yeah, I think he's a good promo, but people just don't know it because they haven't seen it yet. And there hasn't been a program that calls for that yet. But eventually, maybe there will be. Does that
All
answer
right.
the question?
Another
Did I answer the
question.
question at all?
Yeah. Is there another question from Chris Whitehead? Is he asked a few questions here. Without naming names, do any active wrestlers engage with you to study Wrestlenomics?
I saw this question. Study is an interesting word. I would nobody nobody studies Wrestlenomics, other than me, I guess, and I force Gullo to sometimes. Or people who write about wrestling and cover wrestling seriously and do a good job of it, I would say study Wrestlenomics. I mean, there are people in wrestling who probably read what I write and post and maybe listen to this occasionally. And because they do, of course, well, yes, they study Wrestlenomics. But yeah, no, I mean, like, I'm hesitant to say like, yeah, I don't talk to all these wrestlers, but there are people in wrestling who apparently consume Wrestlenomics content. I guess we can say that much. Based on, I guess we can say, like, based on, like, there are wrestlers who subscribe to the Patreon. There are wrestlers and people in wrestling who follow me on Twitter, things like that.
When it comes to all the business stuff that we discuss, I've had like people message me like, "Hey, send me that link or send me that article again or whatever." Like when the Fight TV thing came out, when you showed the filings of how the money they made in 6 months and all that, I had somebody message me like, "Hey, can you send me that? I want to show somebody."
Someone who works in a major company in wrestling?
No. Somebody in a works in a production company in wrestling wanted to show someone else in a production company.
I think I know who you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think there's an interest in it, for sure. I mean, I don't like, for me, like, people like, they don't talk to me much about it. And like, obviously you get like 99% of the credit, which you should, but people like think it's cool what we're doing, like with wrestlers, but I don't know if they really actually like study or say like, yeah, that Raw rating, you broke it down and this and that. But
And here's the
we
thing,
do
like,
have,
I don't know if wrestlers should be. I don't know if I was on TV every week, I don't know if it's healthy to be like looking at the core hours, for example, especially the core hours, as dirty as the core hours are, and nobody understands how dirty they are. If you know what I mean by dirty here, the core hours are, and I will say this as the person who's publishing the core hours and is monetizing reporting of the core hours are terrible to analyze. It's very difficult to take anything meaningful away from core hours. So I can't imagine being a wrestler and trying to understand it and probably misunderstanding it and thinking, well, because the viewership went down in my quarter, oh my God, what am I, and reacting to that. I mean, I doubt, I don't know. I mean, maybe people are looking at it that way and stuff, but I don't know. I would advise not to, and don't take the core hours that seriously. And, you can, wrestling shouldn't be wrestling shouldn't be designed to, to react to data. Data should just inform whether or not what you're doing is working on a really macro scale. I've told people, wrestling is like the religious text or the scientific text of or data is like the scientific text, the religious text of wrestling, and probably for a lot of other businesses too, where you think at the outset, oh, I'm going to learn everything and I'm going to understand everything. I'm going to get the answers to everything. In my experience, I sit down and I try to understand everything, and then you realize, oh, actually, there's these other 10 steps I didn't consider that I need to tackle. But even once you do kind of finish your analysis, you think you've made a chart and you've made sense of the data. What you find out in the end is you can show it to 10 different people, and they've all got a different response to what it is, to what it means. And I think that happens in WWE. I think that happens in AEW, where you can give somebody an analysis of what happened with name your metric, the ratings. If you're trying to make a really important point, you should have a preponderance of things. Like, for example, I tweeted a set of tables today about AEW business, doing a bunch of year-over-year comparisons. And I haven't read the replies, but just knowing the nature of Twitter and the internet and the divisiveness around AEW, I'm sure there are people who have a wide range of responses to that. Oh, this doesn't matter because I mean, how much does it actually mean that AEW is growing? That's up for debate, certainly. And I think, Vince, for example, you can give him, some evidence about, maybe what you're doing here on TV isn't working. And, but anybody can tell themselves a story about, well, because such and such happened, actually, it would be even worse if not for, it's in the end, you have to have a level head and you have to have some self-awareness and some honesty with yourself. If it's your creation, if you're in control of the thing, it's up to you to negotiate how seriously you're gonna take this data, or how easily your mind is gonna be changed for good reason. This all sounds very abstract. I don't know if it makes any sense, but the data doesn't always tell you what you think it's going to tell you, or it doesn't always answer your question at all. But the degree to which it does is still up for some debate. There are still, though, wrong and right answers. AEW's business is growing. Their popularity is growing. Are they making money? That's a related but different question. They're probably not profitable. WWE's increasingly profitable, but they're declining in popularity, as counterintuitive as that sounds, And Vince McMahon can tell himself a story that, hey, look, the reason why my TV rights fees are growing is because of the quality content that we put out. And I can say, no, you're just fortunate to be in this environment where externally the kind of content that you have, that is live sports, has become extremely more valuable than it was in the past by multiple times. And your product is still popular enough that it justifies increasing TV rights fees despite the quality of your content alienating your core audience. You could be making even more money. Your ratings could be higher. Your TV rights fees could be higher. And you'll have people, perhaps in the chat of this very video, who will say that that's nonsense.
Speaking of data, we have another question here from Patreon and Chris Whitehead. What would be the Wrestlenomics data you'd most like to report on if access to the data was no issue? Example, merch sales, non-public salaries, other internal data, etc.
Yeah, I'm glad I thought about that. I'm glad Chris mentioned salaries, because I've been asked this question before, and I think I've said something like merchandise, because that's the type of data that we basically don't have any data on except for WWE's whole e-commerce sales or whole any merchandise sales. But I think salaries would be the most interesting data, and it has to do with treatment of wrestlers who at least compared to other sports, and we can debate whether or not it should be treated like other sports, but in comparison to other sports where the players make something like 50% of the company's revenue. Uh, Somebody was messaging me about this recently, and I had to think it over again. What percentage of revenue the wrestlers make? It's suffice to say, I think it's safe to say, very safe to say, that the wrestlers in WWE, the talent, are getting paid something well under 15% of total revenue. Um, Something well under that, maybe under 10%, given how their revenue has grown. And I'm sure their compensation to talent has grown in recent years too, but probably not to the degree that their revenue has grown. Um, Part of that is related to in recent years having somewhat fewer wrestlers under contract, but I think salaries have probably gone up because of competition for talent with AEW and other players. But at the same time, even despite this COVID era, where they couldn't sell tickets, their TV rights in the U.S. are going up by somewhere between 5 and 10% a year, guaranteed, because of escalators that are written into the contracts. And I doubt everybody's getting a 10% raise every year. But yeah, I would be really interested to see salaries, and I think it would be in the interest of all the wrestlers throughout this top level of the industry for all of their salaries to be public. Um, and it would be in the it'd be to the detriment of companies, WWE and AEW, if their salaries were public, because that would give everybody a lot more clarity about what they were worth as wrestlers, and it would give everybody a lot clearer of an idea, self-awareness notwithstanding, about how much they should be asking for in their next round of contract negotiations. Um, and couple that with the fact that what I just said, wrestlers are probably paid far less than 15% of at least WWE's revenue. I don't know about AEW. I would have to think about that. So it 50% compared to 15%. I don't. You could argue that, well, WWE is more like, wrestling is more like an entertainment than it is a sport. So maybe it doesn't quite rise to 50%. But if you're at well under 15%, maybe 25% is the true fair place to be. But it's well below that.
And remember, you can actually ask a question in the YouTube stream with our super chat function. Yeah, you can donate anything you seem suitable, starts at $1, and we will answer your questions. I have a question for you, Brandon. I'm sure we'll talk more about it on Sunday for our normal show. But today there was a settlement in the GCW IWTV lawsuit.
Yes.
And are you surprised that no money was exchanged hands and just that GCW is going to have to provide 8 exclusive events for IWTV over the next year?
Yeah. Did you read both? I feel like we should read both statements to be fair.
I have them pulled up.
Cool. Well, great.
I have them pulled up.
So read the GCW one first. Since
we'll start with
yeah, that came out first.
Yes. All right, so Game Changer Wrestling is pleased to announce that we have come to terms with a settlement agreement with IWTV that brings an end to the litigation between the parties. This agreement represents a significant milestone for GCW, but most importantly serves as a victory for, in all caps, independent wrestling and its fans. This agreement also affirms our long-held belief that GCW is, this is also all caps, sole owner of our extended library, which includes all the Game Changer Wrestling, Jersey Championship Wrestling, and LA Fights events. This is important not just for GCW, but for independent wrestling promotions across the United States and abroad as we all navigate the ever-changing landscape of professional wrestling. Further, this agreement removes the obstacles that had previously limited our ability to capitalize our content and clears the way for us to move forward with ambitious plans to change the game in 2022 and beyond. Most importantly, this settlement allows us to focus our efforts and resources on what matters, producing and delivering the best product possible for our rapidly growing and global fan base. Finally, While this agreement defines a conclusion to our relationship with IWTV, it does not mean that's the last time you will see GCW on the platform. As part of this arrangement, GCW will provide IWTV with the Settlement Series, a series of 8 live events spanning the course of the next year. We look forward to announcing dates and details on these events in the coming weeks. This last year has been trying. As a small business, our resources are not unlimited. Litigation was a last resort, but necessarily stepped in establishing our independence. At the end of the day, we thrive in the arena, and our resources are the best directed towards the ring, not the courtroom. Ending this process, and I'm sorry, enduring this process would not be possible without the support of our crew, our performers, and most importantly, the fans. Your loyalty has been unwavering, and together we have continued to make history and take both Game Changer Wrestling and Independent Wrestling to new heights.
Okay.
The Settlement Series.
I enjoy that. Before you read the IWTV statement, have you ever worked for GCW?
I have.
Okay. That's sufficient. I did some. It's well over a year ago now, maybe more than a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. I did some short-term consulting, like data work for IWTV, and obviously we've both worked for a number of independent wrestling companies that have appeared on IWTV. So go ahead and read the. Should I say anything about that? Yeah, well, let's say this. It stood out to me that in that statement, GCW says litigation was a last resort. Now, who's suing who here?
They were being sued by IWTV.
Yes. So it wasn't a last resort for them. It was somebody else sued them. Was there a countersuit? Not that I recall. Right?
I don't think so.
My understanding of this case is that GCW, among other things, was so what initiated this lawsuit? They took their content and they wanted to put it on Fight, right? They wanted to do pay-per-views, and IWTV saw this as a breach of their agreement, their written agreement, correct?
Yes.
So I understand one of the issues that GCW had was that IWTV wasn't saving the masters of like footage from each camera. They were only saving what they streamed, the final product. So that was making it difficult for them to, as they owned the content, which everybody is supposed to own their own content, that was making it difficult for them to, say, for example, go and like resell old events to whatever pay-per-view providers, to Fight, video on demand, whatever it might be, I guess. That's my understanding. So that was I don't know if that was a complaint, but that was an issue that GCW had. And maybe, I don't want to speculate, but maybe that had something to do with why they allegedly breached their contract and wanted to go to Fight instead of IWTV. So anyway, not much later in the day today, IWTV put out a statement.
Yes, IWTV statement here. Independent Wrestling.tv, IWTV, is pleased to announce that it settled its lawsuit with Game Changer Wrestling. This settlement verifies IWTV's contention with that GCW should be held accountable to the agreement which they had previously signed with IWTV. The lawsuit was never over ownership of the video footage, as IWTV partners can attest. The IWTV agreements clearly state that the promoters retain all rights, title, and interest to the programs. Rather than continue to waste time and money on leagues that could be better boosting independent wrestling and our independent wrestling partner promotions, IWTV has agreed to accept a series of 8 GCW live events, which will be shown exclusively on IWTV as well as distributed on DVD. Is it B over R? Would that be? What do they mean by that?
Bleacher Report.
BR.
Bleacher Report.
Bleacher, really?
No.
I didn't know that
it's not Bleacher Report. It's not Bleacher Report. I'm gonna look at the context. I did think about that. Like, what are they referring to? Blu-ray.
Blu-ray. Okay. Via SmartMark Video. IWTV wants to take this moment to thank its fans and its partner promotions for staying loyal to independent wrestling and IWTV during this period. With the distraction finally removed, we now look forward to years of streaming the best independent wrestling from our partner promotions.
Yes.
So there you have it. 8 exclusive events. GCW calls it the Settlement Series.
Okay. I enjoy that it's called the Settlement Series. So GCW is going to do 8 more events for IWTV for free, no royalties. Am I getting this all right?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah. And I think Sean Ross Sapp reported that, in fact. So I'm not surprised that there's no money exchange, because I can't imagine, these are big companies with tons of cash here. It it makes some sense that they're just coming to an agreement that doesn't put a huge financial burden on either party here. So yeah, I enjoy anything in wrestling really being named after bureaucratic things.
So somebody joked that the shows would be like GCW were obligated to put this show on number one.
Yeah, and I've seen speculation that maybe they're just going to put together some weak lineups or something, but I doubt it, right? Because ultimately they have to sell tickets, and it wouldn't bode well for their brand anyway if they dogged it big time,
Yeah, no, I think they'll give them 8 quality shows, but the statements, I think GCW came off pretty good in that statement, where I think IWTV came off a little different than, you know what I mean?
Different.
I
What's
would
that?
say a little, like, I would probably never refer to IWTV, but they came off a little bitter. Like,
Okay. We're ending Chris Gullo's career today.
yeah,
I've assured that he will never work for WWE or AEW based on some things I said earlier about labor issues. And now that we've got that top layer assured destruction, we're breaking down his independent career that actually exists now.
yeah. No, I mean, listen, I understand why they feel scorned and burned. I get it. I see both sides. But the statement, I mean, they straight out, like, you know, that we was never about this, never about that. It's like, I don't know what's necessary, but that's just me.
Okay.
I mean, obviously GCW threw digs in their statement too, but
Mm.
all right. So I will ask a question from Super Chat. Brady C has a question here. Thoughts on Netflix stocks huge drop today? All companies with streaming services stocks down today. A lot of doom and gloom around the streaming boom. Less money to throw around at wrestling.
Yeah, I realize we're having some video issues here. I hope the audio is still coming
Yeah.
through okay. I'm trying to fix it on the fly. Um, I'm going to be on with John Pollock on Friday to discuss Netflix among other things. I should mention at the very beginning here, I'm a Netflix investor. I've held some shares since because I've been looking, so I know I've been looking at my lots that today and yesterday, since 2013. And I think I even had shares before that I got rid of because I panicked in the federal shutdown of 2012 or something. But uh, I've lost a lot of money today. No, I think this is the moment where we find out that streaming has reached its maturity level, right? Which we didn't really know where it was going to be. I'm sure there's other markets that their economies will grow and they'll be able to charge higher price points, or the broadband availability in various regions of the world can still be can still grow and can still create an environment where there's more potential customers for something like Netflix or any streaming service. But we haven't really known up to this point, like, where really is the ceiling, where is the saturation point for Netflix or any streaming company. And it's they reported that they were down. I do have an Excel spreadsheet that tracks Netflix subscribers. I don't have it open right now, but they were at somewhere around 60 million. If you do the math and just sort of extrapolate based on population, they report US and Canada together. So they had about 60 million US subscribers, I would guess, based on population, right? How many traditional TV subscribers are there roughly in the United States these days, Chris Gullo? This is your one quiz question for today.
How many subscribers for Netflix?
For US
You would say
linear television, there's about 60 million Netflix subscribers. How many, traditional TV subscribers are there? Traditional TV
aren't
homes.
there 150 million?
No. That's like more. There's not even that many U.S. households. Anyway, it's about just under 80 million. So there's more U.S. TV households that have traditional cable bundle or satellite than there are subscribers to the most popular streaming service, which is Netflix. They were the earliest to the game. At this point, I think, streaming is overinvested in. It's certainly not profitable for a lot of companies. I believe it is profitable for Netflix, but it's not profitable for a lot of companies. Pat Crakes, who everyone should follow on Twitter, has, we're what's ahead is probably a great rebundling where you'll see more mergers along the lines of this Discovery and Warner Media merger, Fox, NBCU. Where do they end up here? Does Netflix become merged with even one of those traditional players someday? But anyway, I think we've all sort of overestimated the potential of streaming. Streaming, don't tell Rich Greenfield this. The cable bundle's not going to die anytime soon. P50 Plus, we've looked at it, and I've yelled at you about this, Gullo. P50 Plus is not down. All TV is down, not P50 Plus. Yeah, the demo's down. 18 to 34 is down. P50 Plus is not down. P50 Plus is a flat line. So at least as long as those people are alive, they're going to be living in pay TV households. And that's where the majority of these big cable companies get their money from. It's not from advertising. It's more so from subscription. But yeah, I think streaming is overinvested in, and to put together enough subscribers or to put together enough revenue for all of this to be worth it in the end, the price is going to have to get higher. Some of these companies are going to have to come together and bundle their services together. But that's in the maybe 3 to 5 years ahead, probably. We probably go, this is just information based on what happened yesterday at the earnings call with Netflix, but we're probably going to see an ad tier eventually for Netflix. And everyone's nightmare. You sharing your Netflix account, Gullo?
You're just trying to get me in trouble today.
You sharing your Netflix with another household?
I'm not going to answer that question.
That's going to get cracked down on. Now, they could be nice about it and just, maybe just make it like, your cell phone plan. You can add on another line. They're going to make it. They're going to do something to monetize additional households because they can probably see.
Like Spotify.
Does Spotify do that?
Yeah, so Spotify has a couples plan where I think it's like $3 more than the regular monthly to add a second user.
Okay. But you're going to see things like that, I think. And obviously, if you look at, people are familiar with their streaming interface. You see they have all these users because so you can separate your profiles. But anyway, I'm sure they can see. And they alluded to 100 million subscriptions that are being shared, or something like that, So 100 million households globally, this would be globally, that are basically not being monetized additionally that are being shared. And I'm sure they can see the IP addresses being used on any given account so that, this is a different internet service user. This is a different household that's using the same account. They're going to figure out a way to monetize that more. They're going to probably introduce an ad tier. As I was saying to someone yesterday, you know, um, like, is it fair that they're thinking about doing this in the economy? Well, the stock market's not good. Inflation is up. We could say that. Um, that if I think everybody agrees, you know, you're being very defensive about the notion of whether or not you're sharing your Netflix account, but you're not doing anything that at least is being prosecuted. I don't think Netflix is going after anybody because of this. I think they're kind of embracing it. And a lot of streaming services are embracing this multi-household sharing of streaming accounts because, well, we'll take a little bit of a hit on something that may or may not be piracy or that we could, in our terms of service, prohibit for the sake of building a customer relationship that is, if we don't do that, maybe your house isn't going to subscribe to Netflix, and maybe you're going to consume entertainment elsewhere, and maybe you're going to go subscribe to Disney Plus, where they are going to embrace that. We want to gather your behavior and gather your habits now, get you on our platform, get you used to it, start consuming the content, and make that a regular habit in your life, and we'll deal with stretching out the monetization later. And now the growth is over. Now the sponge has been fully saturated.
Well, I will say this. And I know I'm not the only person who does this. I know there are many to do this, but there's a lot of streaming services out there, and a lot of people trade. I get this. You can have my login for this. You get that. I get your login for this.
Yeah.
And I'll admit I do that, and I'm sure there's many others to do that because there is so many streaming services that have, for example, critically acclaimed shows on them.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's illegal. I don't know that you're doing anything illegal or against their terms of service.
I don't think it's illegal, but I think they don't want it.
They would like to make more revenue. They would like to make more money. But anyway, I think that's something that they embraced because they want to gain the behavior, and something they'll deal with later once you're used to it and you don't want to give it up anymore. Then you'll pay more to keep it. But anyway, for Netflix as a company, they've we'll have to like explain to kids someday. It's like, Netflix that wasn't always like streaming video on your TV. There was a day when Netflix would send you a little red slip in the mail, and you would get a DVD.
I did it.
Yeah, me too. And that was a super cool service. And then there was like one day where like my roommate was, said, if you go to Netflix's website, because that's where you would select all your DVDs anyway. So the website was something that you went to, but you can actually like watch some movies on there, like right on their website. And all of a sudden, it was the streaming thing. So the point is, they made this huge pivot. Like Vince McMahon has always wanted to pivot into something that's other than goddamn wrestling. They made this huge pivot into a somewhat different business, still related to movies, but they made this pivot from being a DVD mail rental business to being a video streaming business, which is one of the most exciting businesses, at least these days. Not profitable for many, and heavily invested in. And then they made another pivot from not just being the distributor of content through streaming, but being the producer, producing their own content. So they don't have to license it. They create and own their own content. And now what's the next pivot here?
That's what I'm going to bring up to you. Live sports. And we've seen recently more of the Fangs have gotten involved. We've now seen
a matter of time.
The speculation that
was Nick Khan say? It's only a matter of time for Amazon. It's only a matter of time for Apple. It's only a matter of time for Netflix. So maybe that's part of it. Yeah, maybe that's. I know gaming is something that they've talked about. and obviously they have a presence on everyone's television, so it makes sense that maybe there's some way rather than a TV remote, it's a controller that they put in somebody's hand. I don't know, and I
They
think
did put these. Oh, just real quick, I didn't mean to cut you off, but they did put these things on Netflix within the last couple of weeks, and they're games that like you like choose your own adventure type games where like you pick like a scenario and they may
like
like
the
there was one with a
Undertaker,
cat,
the
like cat
Undertaker.
burglar and
There's
stuff
an
like that.
Undertaker
There's the
picture.
Undertaker. Yeah, there's the
Yes,
Undertaker. I've not played that one just because I think
you're a big fan
I've
of the
heard it.
Undertaker, right? Anyway,
I've heard it. I've heard it's stupid. My friends have given the review on the choose your
you're
adventure
definitely
thing.
not going to get hired by WWE now. Um, anyway, maybe gaming, but the world seems so much more forward looking now, and I think everybody identifies that gaming is another maybe the next frontier. I don't know, but everybody identifies that. I don't think anybody identified in 2010 that streaming video was going to be what it is today, or at least what it was invested in as. Um, so, but maybe what sounds more practical, maybe more realistic, is I don't know about live sports by themselves, but merging with Paramount, merging with Fox, NBCU. And notice, that, I mean, Fox kind of makes sense. Fox hasn't deeply invested in streaming. A lot of these companies are going to lose their ass on all this money that they put into streaming. But Fox hasn't. On Fox Nation, they're, they acquired Tubi, but they're not like dumping money into a Peacock. And they sold a lot of their assets off to Disney. So that sounds like Fox has something that Netflix doesn't. That could be of use to Netflix. Netflix has something that Fox doesn't, and maybe there's a match there. But I'm just sort of a wrestling analyst.
When you talk about like mergers and maybe mergers of streaming services, we brought it up on Sunday about HBO Max and Discovery Plus merging together, and maybe that if that happens, that creates a domino effect.
Yeah, I think the costs are such, and the revenue is not enough, that a lot of these platforms are going to have to merge together. And I don't know how it'll all play out, but not just platforms, but companies are probably going to have to merge together. And you'll see, I'm sure HBO Max and Discovery will, I don't know if those brands may or may not still exist, but they're going to be part of a bundle. They're going to be part of some offering to a consumer together, and maybe along with other things as well.
I do know when they made HBO Max, I think that they did fold the DC Universe streaming service. Now that was a Warner Media decision. It was before the merger, but they folded it into there. So, I mean, they have kind of done similar things on the Warner side before. I don't even know if HBO Go is still a thing either. I know that was kind of like
there's a lot of brand confusion at the beginning there. Yeah.
So, I think, we've pretty much gotten close to an hour here. So I don't know if we want to wrap it up here. Or
sure. I mean, I don't want to interfere with your scheduled AW Dynamite watch time, and I don't want to go head to head with Tony. So
yes, because I'm always watching the product.
It's the only wrestling show you watch, right? Is AEW?
That is not true. That is not true.
We're gonna have to talk on Sunday about your experience at WWE.
Yeah, I was at Monday Night Raw. Okay,
you saw the double commitment ceremony. We've got about 2 minutes left here. You saw the double commitment ceremony.
I did, and I saw the Buffalo fans hijack it singing the shout song.
Really? Was that?
Hey! R-Truth even had to address it. He's like, "All right, y'all, calm down." Like,
I didn't watch that part of Raw either, but did that come through on television, or did Kevin Dunn and his team stamp that out?
I don't know if it came on television, but R-Truth addressed it in the ring, so I think it had to have.
Maybe. I don't know. Kevin Dunn's a pretty powerful guy. He can do a lot of things, so I wouldn't underestimate Kevin Dunn if I were you.
I'm not coming after Kevin Dunn. Right? I'm just saying I was there, and the Buffalo fans they hijacked it. I will say this from a live experience, just observing the fans, they enjoy the matches, but sitting there through the backstage segments, other than the Edge segment, the fans seem not into it.
Gotta buried up. Gotta get that one last shot in, don't you? Yeah, figures.
Well, the matches were great quality, you know.
You
And they gave
actually
the
got to watch
fans
some WWE matches that did not have rapid camera switches, that did not have people shaking the camera. That must have been a relieving experience.
it was like there were some very good matches. They also gave two main event matches, like for the show main event, and then there was a dark match
Oh, wow.
main event right after. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Dynamite's going to start, so you better get going and sign off.
But all right, so we want to thank you guys. If you guys like this and you want to do us to do more of this, let us know on the social media, Wrestlenomics on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. But I'm Chris Gullo, that's Brandon Thurston. We'll see you Sunday for a live edition of Wrestlenomics Radio. It'll be 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time this week. Right?
I'll put audio of this out on Patreon too for the subscribers. So thanks. See you next time.